with demand expected to come back, the question remains, does this mean the economy is back on track?
Companies now, after experimenting with offshore in places like India, Philippines, and Poland, want to bring those jobs back.
We invest in the U.S. We're the biggest exporter in the country. In the cycle we're in right now, we're creating jobs.
From Radio America, it's Neil Asbury's Made in America, the show that explores American industry, large and small, and promotes American-made products everywhere. Put Neil Asbury's Made in America to work for you.
A very big welcome to you today. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, man, we're getting very, very close to a very, very important election. And as we said last week, you know, every election is the most important election in the history of our nation and the time that we've been on this earth. But this truly, truly is a really important election. And the alternatives that we're looking at, I don't think have ever been more stark or more different.
Yeah, it's quite obvious. I mean, if you look at well, I'm trying to understand the Biden, except all I'm thinking is that Obama-Biden, 2.0. But if you look at the two different concepts, one represents tremendous pain in taxes and so forth, and the other one represents a continuation of what we would hope would be the job growth, growth in the economy, and an optimistic view of where we're going without alienating certain segments of society and industry and manufacturing.
You know, Rich, I don't think this is Obama 2.0. I think this is Obama 5.0 or 6.0 because this is going to be so much more the lefties, the crazies. I mean, Obama, that was kid stuff compared to
that's
some of
true.
the stuff that we're talking about now.
From that perspective, I think you're 100% correct.
Let's pack the courts and raise taxes.
Let's study. He's going to put a blue ribbon panel together.
Yeah.
That's going to study I mean, what are you kidding me? We're going to study the packing of the court?
Who's going to be the blue ribbon panel? No,
God,
this is crazy stuff.
This is crazy.
But, what I'm seeing in the media a lot right now, and, about, what should the message be and how should President Trump be communicating, what his vision is for our country? And a lot of folks, and this seems to be pretty consistent, is that President Trump should really stay focused on the economy. He's always getting high marks on the economy. When the voters are contrasting President Trump to Vice President Biden, Trump is getting much higher marks for managing the economy than a Joe Biden would. And you're hearing that from all over the place. President Trump should really run on the economy. And back in, what was it? That would have been, 1992, flashback, when Bill Clinton won. And it was James Carville who kept reminding him, it's the economy, stupid. It's the economy, stupid. Don't talk about anything else. Talk about the economy. And I think that's what President Trump needs to do. I think he needs to talk about the economy more.
Well, that's what Reagan also said. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?
And the polls right now are showing that the American people think that they are better off today than they were 4 years ago.
In spite of the pandemic.
In spite of. And but that message, I think, needs to be really pounded more. And, and especially in the next. And I think a lot of people, these next however many days are left, it's going to be very, very important. I think a lot of people are there. And I think that despite what the liberal media says, that this thing is a lot closer than some of the pundits want you to believe. And remember, these are liberal media outlets who want to tell you that their guys so far ahead don't show up.
That's exactly correct.
So they're even part of the culture wars, these polls. And they're stupid because on one day you could see like 15-point swings from one poll to another. How can that be? Rich, you got a good friend coming on right now, someone that I know you admire very much. I've had the pleasure of working on a panel once, some time ago, together, and he's a great, nationally recognized economist. He's done a lot of work. We're very pleased to have with us Tony Villamil. He's not only a great economist, but he's the founder and principal of the Washington Economics Group, and he was the U.S. Undersecretary at the U.S. Department of Commerce during the days of President H.W. Bush 41. And I love the U.S. Department of Commerce, a great group. We both served on the DEC, the District Export
That's right.
Council, appointed by the Secretary of Commerce. I've been in that position. I was the chair of the Florida DEC for many years. I was the vice chair of the DEC nationally. Been in Washington many times. U.S. Department of Commerce, this massive building, and that's where Tony used to work as undersecretary under President H.W. Bush. Tony, welcome to Made in America.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be with you and the listeners of the program.
Tony, you've just recently co-authored something that was very important, a U.S. presidential economic analysis of the battleground states in 2020. Can you tell us about that? And what are you seeing as the sort of differences between these candidates? And do these battleground states, are they picking up on these differences?
Well, I think that's right on point. I mean, the bottom line is, if you look at the prior Biden work as the economic policy guru under Biden, which he was appointed to the so-called economic recovery, which was really the slowest economic recovery in the nation's history, recent history, and his plans of Biden and Harris. Compared to Trump, Pence, and the record of the 4 years pre-COVID, of course, because one of the things about COVID that is seldom discussed is the fact that it's not made in America, so it's an external shock to the system, but we're starting to recover. But the bottom line is, under Biden-Harris, we see a significant increase in the tax burden for each of these battleground states, but also for all citizens of the U.S. that pay taxes via spending increases. And under Trump-Pence over the next 4 years, what we see is the emphasis, like we have seen in the last 4 years, on individual initiative, entrepreneurship, and a much more favorable climate for investment and growth. That's really the bottom line between the two candidates.
So, Tony, let me ask you this. In your excellent analysis that you have done for the James Madison Institute, which I'd like to talk to about if we have time later, we're talking about Florida, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. So how is it resonating? When you think about it, Tony, the differences are so stark to me in terms of one really encompasses the concept of the American dream, individuality. I shudder to think in a tough economy that you would actually, break the backs of the small to middle-sized businesses and increase taxes at the same time that you're dramatically increasing taxes on the high-end individuals and the corporations. To me, it sounds like everyone's going to be paying more. I don't care what anyone says. Across the board, you're going to pay more. You're going to pay more for gas. You're going to pay more for products. You're going to pay more for food. How does this resonate in some of these swing states? Even in Florida, for example, where we are, Florida is a very important state in this scenario.
It is, and I think what is important is to be able to. There's a lot of noise, obviously, prior to the elections now coming up, so it is important to emphasize the fact that, for example, in our study, we show that. Under the Biden proposals, if you include the cost per taxpayer for a family of four, in Florida you get over $6,000 a year more in terms of cost per family. In Michigan you get $5,000, in Ohio $8,000. We estimated those tax burdens in Pennsylvania $7,000 per family. Wisconsin, 6,000. But the bottom line also, we get slower growth relative to what we have seen in the last 4 years. And to me, that means employment opportunities. Why is this? Why would this happen? Because of the Biden proposals would not only revert back, and basically abolish the Jobs Cuts and Tax Act of 1916 and 17 that President Trump and Vice President Pence put together, increasing the tax burden. They say, well, $400,000 a year, less than that you don't pay taxes. Yes, you do, because obviously those taxes, those spending categories that they're talking about, financing from those taxes, would have to come from somewhere, and they're going to come from the average family. At the same time, what we do see is that under Trump-Pence, we see the continuation of very strong growth in the economy once these COVID issues are resolved, which are getting to be resolved. And we see that we would create, on average, close to 3 million more jobs a year under Trump-Pence than we would do under Biden-Harris.
And it all really, but Tony, do you see that this message is, these are going to be the states that's going to determine who the next president is.
I believe you're right.
And I would even suggest that it's going to come down to one state, and the state that I am picking is Pennsylvania. And it looks to be pretty well neck to neck there. You know, I'm assuming that the president's going to win Florida. I'm going to assume he's going to win Ohio. But, you know, like in a state like Pennsylvania, I mean, is this message getting through, Tony?
Well, I'm not in the in the political arena, but the economic arena. But I think it's important to keep emphasizing the economy, and
exactly.
I don't hear a lot of that relative to. That's why we did the battleground states, and they clearly show the tax burden increasing under Biden-Harris. They do show that if you go socialized medicine, Medicare for all, as they call it. The impact would be very, very large in terms of a family of four. For example, if you include Medicare for all, you know, the cost per family of four would be $42,000 more a year. So in Pennsylvania, just alone. So
Tony, hold that thought. We're going to take a quick break, but that's very important. I mean, the cost of health care and what that would cost under President Biden. We're together with Tony Villamil. He's a nationally recognized economist. He's founder and principal of the Washington Economics Group. He's with us. Still a lot more to talk about. Stay with us.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Ruffin, and we are together with Tony Villamil, nationally recognized economist, the founder and principal of the Washington Economics Group, and he's a former undersecretary at the Department of Commerce under President H.W. Bush. So, Tony, let's stay on health care for a second and Medicare for all and what that would cost, because, you know, President Biden is, I mean, he's fully committed to the sort of liberal sort of position on health care, keeps moving much further to the government option, right? The single payer option. And I don't know how he's going to, you know, kind of withstand the barrage that's going to come from the left wing of the Democrat Party to achieve that goal. And Obamacare was just one step towards that single payer option. In other words, another way to put it, government controlled, rationed health care. What do you think?
Well, that's correct. And I think the even though people talk about, you know, whether he goes Medicare for all, which seems likely, eventually, especially like you said, with the left side of the party, which is the majority of the party now, the Democratic Party, what you end up getting is a significant increase in the cost and in the ability of Americans to have to pay for it. But you seldom hear about the cost. For example, we estimated in this study for the James Madison Institute over a 10-year period, Medicare for all would cost would significantly increase the cost to $32 trillion over a 10-year period, and you know who's going to pay for that? It's going to be you and me and the average taxpayer. So those are the kind of things that need to be discussed, and those health care proposals, even Medicare for more, as they call it, the milder version is a step towards Medicare for all. It still is a pretty stiff cost relative to the tax burden on families.
See, I don't know how he avoids going into single payer eventually. I mean, first of all, Kamala Harris totally endorses state-run health care. she does not like private health care. She made that quite clear leading up to, the point that she almost knocked out Biden, when she just ripped him apart. I mean, called him a segregationist. And I guess that's all, kissy makeup. That's how it works. But the point of the matter is that I don't see how we get out of that tracking going to a single payer if in fact, he gets in and she goes along for the ride, and ultimately she may become the president for all we know, along with Nancy Pelosi as the vice president, which we all know there's something going on there. But also, when you think about it, Tony, the idea of the Green New Deal, which has been pushed very, very heavily, and he endorses, it's right in his website, it's there for all to see. That would, if you think about Pennsylvania being, the state that could actually make a difference, Neil and Tony, then fracking goes out the window completely. And the cost of living as a result of that, in terms of $4 gas, $5 gas, $6 gas a gallon, the delivery of products and so forth, the ability to raise, cattle and so forth, without having the Green New Deal, we're in a lot of trouble. So the cost of health care goes up dramatically. The quality of health care drops dramatically. The cost of living in terms of feeding your family, which, by the way, feeds into health care, pardon the pun of the word feeding, goes towards health care if you can't feed your family well. Everything seems to be going in the wrong direction.
So, Tony, I mean, what Rich is describing is socialism. And, socialism
I'm thinking
is the
Maduro.
great evil. And, you're an immigrant. You know the dangers of socialism.
Yeah.
I mean, what the hell is going on with this party, taking us down the Venezuelan highway?
Yeah, I think that's the whole issue. I came in as a young kid, as a refugee from my parents from communist Cuba, and even though I was only 12 years old, I was able to see some of the things that could happen. And then, of course, as a student of what's going on in Venezuela and some of the other countries as an economist now, I see the destruction of private initiative. Because what happens is this: look, when you increase the size of the public sector, the spending, it has to come from somewhere. And it's going to come from you and me, from families. It's going to come from companies, individual initiative, entrepreneurs. And there's an inefficiency built into all that when you shift all those spending resources towards the public sector versus the private sector. That's the bottom line here. So you have a disincentive to invest. You live off what the private sector created initially, but eventually you get into a downward spiral relative to economic activity. For example, the study for James Madison shows that we would create 3 million more jobs per year, high-paying jobs in the high-wage area under Trump, Pence, than we would do under Biden-Harris. And that's just a static analysis. It doesn't include some of the more dynamic effects that will take place as a result of putting the burden on families and putting the burden on businesses and the private sector. That are the ones that create the economic miracle that we have.
So, yeah, I mean, Tony, it's very well said. And as we said at the top of the show, the differences in this election are so dramatic, are so stark, between socialism and economic freedom. Socialism or economic freedom. I think that's what everybody should be thinking about right now. Strip away the personalities because, the personalities, the who's got the moral high ground and all of that kind of stuff, it's endless. It's really about policies. What are the policies that's going to create the jobs? Tony, unfortunately, we're out of time. We're together with Tony Villamil. We'll get him back real soon. Nationally recognized economist, founder and principal at the Washington Economics Group, a great guy who was also the U.S. Undersecretary at the Department of Commerce under President H.W. Bush. Tony, thanks for your thoughts.
Well, I appreciate it very much, and thank you for being with me. And say hello to all the listeners, and appreciate all what you are doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Coming up, we have Rick Gates, who's President Trump's former deputy campaign manager back in 2016. And as we've been saying, we got to focus on the economy. We've got to focus on the economy, and that's what we're going to talk about next.
Made in America.
sharply higher at the open. Stocks continued to perform well over the course of the day Tuesday.
And I think that bodes well here over the next couple of years for having bigger demands coming to this country.
Now, more of Neil Asbury's Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Ruffman. Hey, Rich, it's always good to have our friend Tony Villamil on the show. A great guy down in South Florida, very, very well respected in Washington, a great economist, professor of economics, and undersecretary at the U.S. Department of Commerce. A great career. And I think he hit it right. And, you know, he was an immigrant from Cuba, and he understands the dangers of socialism. And, you know, we had Maria Salazar on last week, who's running for Congress, actually. It's just by coincidence in South Florida, in the great city of Coral Gables. And she also immigrated from Cuba and is really, really putting that sounding alarm out there. The lights are flashing. They're blinking. It's red, red, red. These sirens are going off. Socialism is bad.
Look,
Socialism is bad.
The bottom line is, if anybody watched the RNC convention, the kind of virtual but not really convention, they listened to the gentleman who was a Cuban American. And that gentleman had the most important statement to make. And he said, all the promises that I am hearing coming from the Democratic side are the same promises that I heard as a child in Cuba made to my parents, promising them free everything. Everything's going to be wonderful. We're going to take care of your education. We're going to take care of your health care. We're going to make sure you have food. We're going to make sure you have transportation. And in so doing, they lost their souls. And people would risk coming across the Florida Straits, being eaten literally by sharks on tires. I lived on Key Biscayne. I saw the broken rafts coming in all the time when I was there. And if you don't listen to those words from that man who lived through it, then you're really lost. Because the truth of the matter is they're lying to America, and we have to save America.
Well said, man. Rich, you get fired up, but that was a great comment. That was a great message, and I'm glad you made it right now, right here on our show. Coming up, we have someone who's got a great message, too, and that's Rick Gates, President Trump's former deputy campaign manager back in 2016, and they pulled off the greatest upset of all times. Rick, welcome to Made in America.
Neil, thanks for having me. Good to be with you.
And it's a real pleasure, and I'm glad you're here, and I love the thoughts and the things that you're saying. Number one, that President Trump needs to regain and refocus control of the political narrative, and he needs to focus his attention on the energy of America's economy and convince Americans that his economic vision is the right vision. And Rick, you know, I'm seeing this said in different ways right now, you know, throughout the political pundit world, that President Trump has got a great economy to run on. He's beating Vice President Biden very handedly on who's the best to manage the economy. The economy is really the most important issue in every election, but he doesn't seem to be embracing that message as much as he should. What say you? You know him very, very well.
Look, it is it's the president's greatest achievement in his 4 years in office, almost 4 years in office, and it's his greatest endorsement for why he should be reelected. And I think in this closing 12-day period, starting tonight, you are going to see that message expanded greatly. But the president is non-political, and he's not politically correct. And so, yeah, he's got other issues on his mind, like Joe Biden's corruption with his son. So he's going to go after those issues, too, particularly since the media doesn't want to cover them. But he will revert back to the economy because the president knows better than anybody that the economy is – talking about the economy is his path to victory.
You know, you're 100% correct. I mean, when we just had Tony Villamil on for a while from the Washington Economics Group, and we're talking about the economy and the difference between Biden's economy concept and, of course, President Trump. And we're looking at what's out there right now, and the differences are so obvious to us that one embraces freedom of America, the dream of America, the ability to succeed, the ability to grow, and the other looks like a controlled society. In other words, if you vote for Biden, you're voting to give more money to the federal government and give up your choices in life. If you vote for Trump, we continue with the greatness that America has become in the last 47 months versus the 47 years of a loser named Joe Biden, who doesn't seem to have an idea. He has thoughts that he throws out. So let me ask you a question. What is it that is precluding the folks out there from understanding the stark differences, Rick, between the good and the bad?
Absolutely. Look, I think the media is doing a great job of disguising, who Joe Biden really is and what he stands for. And to your comment just now, I'm not sure Joe Biden does have his own policy position. I think he's being fed and prepared. As we now know, he took off the campaign trail starting on Monday, allegedly to prepare for the debate, although it seems that it had more to do with his son's, alleged corrupt activities. But I think what the people want to see, look, people in America, they want to know what each of the candidates stand for from a policy perspective. In every presidential cycle in the history of our country, economy has been the number one issue. You could argue that maybe in 2004 national security was, but economy still played a role in that. Just like in 2020, economy will be the prevailing issue, along with, making sure that we bring a resolution to the pandemic and the coronavirus. But that's all being worked at. But what amazes me is the resiliency of the economy that President Trump has established. Even in the midst of the pandemic and everything that's happened that nobody anticipated, look at the strength of our markets. Look at the unemployment numbers. Those are all good indicators moving forward. And I think there is fear that if Joe Biden's elected, all that goes away.
And I think it's I think it's correct to be having that fear because it's absolutely true. Hey, Rick, we got to take a short break. We're together with Rick Gates, President Trump's former deputy campaign manager. Still a lot more to talk about. Let's get into some of these battleground states. Stay with us.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury. We're together with Dr. Rich Rothman and Rick Gates, who's President Trump's former campaign chairman, and in that really, really incredible victory in 2016. And Rick, you've also said that the president's campaign must return to the two pillars of its 2016 victory, digital advertising and a strong ground game that turns out the votes. So, excellent. So, let's talk about that a little bit. We hear about Joe Biden. He's got this massive amount of money that he's brought in. Now, we don't really know where this money's coming from. Dark money, wherever it's coming from. But anyway, hundreds of millions of dollars are coming in. President Trump has got a bit of he's behind in that regards. I don't know if that really means anything. I can tell you that in the state of Florida, where I live, that every channel, every commercial break, every time it's Joe Biden this, Joe Biden that, I'm Joe Biden and I approve of this message. So, he's really, really spending a lot of money. I don't know if it matters. Is it all? You say it's all about digital advertising, but to me, it's going to come down to two or three states. And I think that the big state that I'm watching is Pennsylvania. And from what I can see, and I have three companies in Pennsylvania, from what I can see, especially out in Western Pennsylvania, President Trump is very, very popular. Even in the Southwest, Northeast, any place that's not Philadelphia or Pittsburgh, President Trump is very, very popular. So how do you see this coming down the final stretch? What state are you watching? And, how close do you think that this thing really is? A lot there, but I'd love to get your thoughts.
Absolutely. I think the race is obviously a lot closer than the Democrats or the media have made it out to be. I thought it was very telling that Joe Biden's campaign manager last weekend came out and was very specific to Democrats about please go vote. Don't be complacent. And normally people would say, oh, that's political spin. They're just trying to make sure they get their vote out. But in reality, the Biden campaign is worried. Look, they saw what happened in 2016. So they have the benefit of hindsight. Nobody expected the outcome in 2016, from the Democratic side, clearly. So they're aware and they're scared that that same outcome could happen because here's why, Neil. If you look at those battleground states, President Trump is actually doing better today than he was in 2016. So you talk about Pennsylvania, Hillary's ahead by almost 7 points. Biden's ahead by 3 or 4 right now. You look at Michigan, Hillary was ahead by 12. Joe Biden's ahead by 6. All of these, kind of polls are just absolutely wrong at this stage. And let me tell you why, because there's something that we found that was very important in 2016, and we ultimately ended up calling it the Trump factor. And it was kind of the silent vote. It was those people who were polled and said, oh, I'm going to vote for Hillary Clinton or Jill Stein or, somebody else. And then they went to the voting booth and they voted for Donald Trump. And I think personally that number is higher in 2020 than it is in 2016. And so I think you're going to see this kind of cascading effect over the next 12 days of President Trump doing what he does best, his signature rally, getting out in the people, with the people, and delivering his message directly, no filters. Clearly, Biden has to bring in former President Obama to take over his campaign roles. And President Obama is going to be now on the campaign trail. But look, at the end of the day, the American people, when they go into a voting booth, they know who they're voting for. It's not Barack Obama. And the same strategy applied with Hillary. They tried to bring Barack Obama in the end, and it was a disaster. I mean, he couldn't motivate the people to go vote for her any more than she could. And I think the same thing is going to happen with Joe Biden this time around. So, look, as I say in politics, in political campaigns, a day is an eternity. So there's still a lot more that could happen. But I love, particularly where President Trump is now. I think the money factor, to your point, money is always important. But I got to tell you, in 2016, we were outspent 3-4 to 1 going into the final stretch. I mean, what we did effectively were those digital ads. And that's simply because you can do 150,000 digital ads in one day to targeted voters, persuadable voters, whereas, the traditional ads cost millions of dollars. And most people don't even watch commercials anymore because they go to their computer or cell phone. So that was a specific tactic in 2016 that we used that worked, and I think they're using it now. I'd hope to see more of that digital advertising because I think that's going to really help them and give them the messaging boost that they need in some of these battleground states.
Well, I think you're 100% correct on that. But one of the things I find astounding, and I don't miss any one of them, and that is, as you said before, face-to-face, turning out the voters at these tremendous rallies. One of the things that I watched, and I just tip my hats off to you, Rick, in 2016 were these enormous rallies. We have not seen that in contemporary times. We haven't. And this time around, I'm seeing bigger rallies. I mean, I'm seeing right now, with pandemic, 20,000, 25,000. I mean, when you're lucky enough to see the long shot, which gets taken off right away, it'll be there for a nanosecond. You see more people than I've ever seen before. Comparing 2016 to what we're seeing 2020, do you think that's shaken up I think the Democrats are shaken by that. What do you think?
Yeah, and I absolutely agree. And I think the Democrats' counter to that is, look, President Trump does these rallies, but he already has those voters. But what people don't understand is those rallies do two things. One, they motivate, they galvanize, they incentivize the people at them. And you want to make sure on Election Day, remember, think about this, from a polling perspective, I can poll you 100 times. If you don't go out and actually vote on Election Day, your vote doesn't count. It doesn't matter. So that's why a lot of these polls are so misleading, is because they're not really capturing accurate data. They're guesstimates based on modeling and algorithms. And then the second reason these rallies are important is because he's not only reaching the people at the rallies, but every media camera, TV camera is covering him, and he's getting piped into television and social media all across the country. And again, he is communicating directly. That is exactly why those rallies are so impactful and why they helped so much in 2016. You got to keep in mind, I mean, this is not a politician. And that's why his message and his personality, that all resonates with people. And there were so many people in 2016.
Rick, we got to take a quick break. I mean, this is really fascinating. If you have time, I'd like to ask you about early voting and what you think that is doing this year that it wasn't, say, 4 years ago. Can you join us for a few more minutes?
Absolutely.
Okay, we're a great conversation. It's so important. Rick Gates, President Trump's former deputy campaign chairman, a lot to talk about. We want to talk about early voting. Early voting, what's that doing this year that it wasn't last year or 4 years ago? Stay with us. I'm so excited here.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with Dr. Rich Rothman. And Rich, man, we're so fortunate to have with us right now Rick Gates, President Trump's former deputy campaign manager, chairman, actually, I should say. Chairman, I don't want to demote Rick. Chairman of President Trump's astounding 2016 win. And Rick's got a question for you here about early voting.
Yeah, it seems, I went out the other day and I voted early because I figured better do it now than later because I think millions upon millions of people are going to vote like never before. And I have to tell you, the numbers that I'm seeing and I'm being told, and we're in South Florida, it's astounding. So, Rick, let me ask you this. Compared to 4 years ago, what's your take on this early voting and where do you think that's headed?
Yeah, look, this is one of the few dynamics that is different than 2016. And in the 2016 election, the campaign and the Republican Party probably did one of its best jobs of getting people registered and then also getting people to vote early. And that really impacted our wins in North Carolina and Florida. And it was very, very essential. The Democrats, once again, hindsight, looking back at 2016, said, oh, my God, the Republicans, got their act together. We need to do the same in 2020. And you've seen this just massive push on both sides. And what you're going to see, look, there are a lot of people talking about, early voting numbers and the total number of ballots that have been, shipped off and all that stuff. But you can't look again. It's like the national polls. Don't look at the national numbers. Look at the state numbers, especially in these battleground states, because that's really going to tell us where all that vote's coming from. And I got to tell you, based on what I've seen, the new numbers of Republicans that have been registered in a lot of these key battleground states, it's surprising to the Democrats. Like it's there are some states, obviously, the Democrats have got more people registered and out to vote early. But if you look at it on par with what they were expecting, that's why they say this race is tightening up. They're worried because they thought they were going to demolish the Republicans and the Trump campaign in getting people to vote early and to register, new registrations. And those factors are not having the impact that the Democrats thought. So I think we're in a really good place overall. But, you can't say this enough. You can't stress enough. People have to go vote. It is, common that, the typical average Republican voter likes to go out on Election Day. The Democrat voter typically votes, more in line with early voting or mail-in ballot, absentee ballot.
Well,
so
of course they do,
really
and often, as often as they can, Rick.
Exactly. Yeah, multiple times, exactly.
Yes, of course. That's their mantra.
So Rick, talking about, you touched upon it, and I've read this, and I was pretty shocked by it. Like in Florida, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and you look at the amount of registered Democrats versus registered Republicans over the last couple of election cycles, and typically there's a lot more registered Democrats because there's more registered Democrats. So typically in the states you see that. But in these battleground states, and I'm talking Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, these really, really important states, Republicans have made huge progress in closing that gap, if not completely. Is that really a big deal?
It's a huge deal, and the Republicans have done a much better job since 2016 of pulling all these resources together, which is why you mentioned, the two pillars that I say is ground game. And this ground game, that's what that means. That means going out, getting new voters, getting people to vote early. It's putting together communities of support, for President Trump. All that matters because, again, at the end of the day, if you don't go vote, your vote doesn't count. So, we need to get every vote possible to get out there and make sure that we can pull the president, across the finish line, which is exactly what happened in 2016. And that is why so many people were just shocked that the president pulled it out, because we had these pockets of early voters and new registrants. I mean, just to give you an idea, we had 4 million people that the campaign registered that had no interest in supporting the party. They had just come out to support President Trump. They had never been registered, never been listed before. 4 million.
Hey, Rick, I mean, Rich has got something here.
Well,
that I think
here's something we have to talk about: minorities. I am seeing something right now that I haven't seen in decades, and that is the black male vote is shifting. And we saw it this week.
Young African Americans as well.
It is
Hispanics.
shifting. The Hispanic vote is very important. Rick, talk about the minorities for a second, because I think this is very important.
And then also tell us what's going on with the seniors, because Trump seems to be
that's a
losing
little confusion.
Seniors.
Yeah,
so
right.
Balance that out for us, and we just got a little bit of time left.
Yeah, real quick on the minorities, I think you're going to see the same thing in 2016. Those numbers, the black vote and the Latino vote, are actually going to be higher for President Trump than anybody's anticipating, and for exactly some of the reasons you just stated, Rich. There is an interest and drive towards supporting President Trump because he actually is talking about the issues that matter to them. And then on the seniors had the most mail-in ballots. They're the category that and obviously that's because of the pandemic and the virus. But you're going to see a surge in especially in states like Florida, North Carolina, where the seniors are going to come out and support President Trump just like they did in 2016.
Hey, Rick, great time. Rick Gates, President Trump's former deputy campaign chairman. We're out of time.
Except for his book, Rick's new book, Wicked Game, an insider story on how Trump won, Mueller failed, and America lost. Get it at Amazon.com for sure.
Hey, Rick, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, I appreciate it, guys. Take care.
Folks, unfortunately, we're out of time, but we're going to be back again next week for another adventure of Made in America, where we never stop fighting for your jobs.